Lion Media.
One of the mandates here as seekers of pure, unbiased spiritual truth is to introduce, and in some cases reintroduce, people of all generations to the inspirational, classical, spiritual literature of the ages. The following audiobook falls into that very select and important category. Here you will find ageless wisdom, timeless truisms, and unbounded inspiration from ancient Hindu texts such as the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Upanishads, and so many more from the voluminous Vedas of ancient India. We too examine the deepest truths of the Torah, the Christian scriptures, as well as the Quran, Tao Te Ching, the teachings of Confucius, Gautama Buddha, and even the great Zoroaster. Likewise, we contemplate the wisdom of contemporary teachers such as Meher Baba, Paramahansa Yogananda, Vivekananda, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, as well as Kihil Gibran, Swami Sachit Ananda, Baba Ramdas, and Terence McKenna, to name only a very few. Here we cast the net wide to include the humble parables of Jesus, the Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, as well as legendary life-changing eternal avatars such as Sri Krishna, Lord Rama, Vishnu, Shiva, and the Buddha, to include the greatest insights of the ever-expanding spiritual universe. As a now old incredible string band song goes, may the long-time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way home. For Inner Lion Media, I'm Jagannatha. Dude Dehari Baba Maharaj, the non-eating saint of Pasupatinath, Nepal. I first met His Holiness Dude Dehari Baba Maharaj in 1993 in Pasupatinath, just outside Kathmandu. Dude is the Hindi word for milk, which is an important part of this story. The sacred Pasupatinath temple is located on the banks of the Bagmati River, approximately 5 kilometers northeast of the city in the eastern part of the Kathmandu Valley. This extensive precinct is a sprawling collection of temples, ashrams, images, and inscriptions raised over the centuries along the banks of the Bagmati, and is included as one of the 7 monument groups in UNESCO's designation of the Kathmandu Valley. Perhaps more importantly, The sprawling temple is also thought to be one of the holy abodes of Lord Shiva on the continent. I remember a friend and I were enjoying the general atmosphere and holy history of this magical place as a home of Shiva Parvati, with a large ancient burning ghat, which serves as a portal for the dead from this world to the next. One, they say, is extremely fortunate to be dispatched via the ever-smoldering fires of Pasupatinath. I will take them at their word. Pasupatinath, too, is a major tourist attraction in Kathmandu, so there were naturally many rather suspect-looking yogis posing for pictures with visitors in exchange for a few rupees. They, with their thin, weather-beaten bodies covered in ash, their long, matted, twisted hair or jata wrapped high around their heads, and their faces adorned with the colorful tilak of the Ramanuj and Shivite Sampradayas. Pasupatinath is too a place of ancient stone steps, and more ancient stone steps, and yet even more ancient stone steps. Even in those days, while still a young, healthy man, it was tiring to make one's way around the huge temple grounds. At one point, we paused for a rest, when out from a small building appeared the most curious man I perhaps have ever seen. The old yogi was tall for that part of the world, with rich, dark olive skin, bright brown eyes, and an engaging smile, peaceful countenance, and the longest, thickest jata I have ever seen or could scarcely imagine. "Would you like to come in and have some tea?" he asked in near-perfect English. My companion and I were instantly drawn to this self-effulgent mystic of largely indeterminate age, but probably around 60. "Thank you, yes," I countered, knowing well just how important a role tea had in life in this mysterious, uncertain region of the world. "Please," he said, kindly issuing us into the narrow doorway of his small rectangular stone room. "Sit down, my friends," he offered, pointing to an old woven carpet on the floor of this amazing abode. The walls were covered with dozens of old framed prints of Lord Rama, Radha Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, Hanumanji, Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. He sat graciously behind a long, low desk covered with various framed pictures, personal items, his prayer beads, and several impressive black quartz shaligrams, which I knew to be collected by devotees in the depths and along the banks of Nepal's Gandaki River. Materially, a shaligram is a fossilized shell thought to be the manifestation of Vishnu as the universal principle by the Vaishnavite and Smartist sects of what they today call Hinduism. They remain popular in Vaishnavism as an iconic representation of the divine. Shaligrams typically manifest in the form of spherical black quartz fossils in the Devonian period, which existed from 400 to 66 million years ago. This gentle, kindly man who introduced himself as Jude Baba gracefully poured us each a cup of thick, milky tea with endless sugar, and then thoughtfully slid it across the table to each of us. "Will you be taking, Baba?" I asked. "No," he said. "I only take 1 cup in the morning." By this time we were joined by a local fellow who silently wandered in and sat down. "Babaji does not eat anything," he said. "Not for the last 40 years running." His matter-of-fact tone belied the incredible content of what he was saying. "I'm sorry, what do you mean?" my friend inquired. "I don't follow." "What I mean, brother," the man replied, "is that Maharaj does not take anything, with the exception of 1 small cup of very milky tea after his bath in the morning." All eyes shifted to Baba. "Yes," he said, smiling, shaking his head gently side to side in the way that all Indians do. "How long, Baba?" I asked, incredulous now about this local's outrageous claim. "As he said," remarked the old yogi, waving his hand in the air as if swatting away some imaginary fly. "It is so, by the grace of Sri Ram." I looked at my friend. He looked at me, and we believed them both. Baba then turned to his old harmonium, where he began to chant many variations of Ram's name, activities, and pastimes in a wonderful bhajan such as we had never before enjoyed. He was not singing to or for us. This was clear. He was singing to his god. We stayed with Baba for about an hour that afternoon, but I made it a point to visit every succeeding day I was in Kathmandu. I would drop in for his darshan, remembering to bring him flowers, blankets, incense, etc. Actually, it wasn't all that easy to bring him anything. After all, he didn't eat. In the early morning of my final visit to Baba, in his bhajan kutir, awarded him for life by the Nepalese government, I drank one final earthen cup of tea or chai. He blessed me and handed me a small rumpled piece of paper on which he had elegantly written his name, mailing address, and contact number. With that I bowed low and took my leave. Upon arriving back in the States, I found myself thinking of Maharaj more and more often, and even seeing him in dreams. When I did, it was always the same. He was standing before me, long hair outstretched, bathed in light, his eyes shining, skin glowing. He smiled and said only, "Ram, Ram, Ram, Ram." About 8 months later, it came to my heart to invite him to our Sri Center as our resident yogi. Toward that end, I commissioned a local contractor to build a 20 by 15 guest house next to the swimming pool in a lovely shaded private enclosed piece of the West Field, especially for Baba. Eventually the day arrived, and he flew into the Buffalo airport, where the devotees met him with a full kirtan, flower garlands, and homemade sweets in a silk-covered box put together by my wife Vrinda Devi. The always energetic yogi was, I believe, very touched, as were we. It was a happy day. Even though it was so many years ago, I can tell you the date, June 1st, 2001. And how can I remember? Because it was the very day that the ill-fated king of Nepal, Gyanendra Bir Bikram Shah Dev, was massacred with his family at their palace. 9 members of the royal family, including the queen and 25-year-old Princess Shruti, were killed in a mass shooting during a regular weekly gathering at the palace. A government-appointed inquiry team named Crown Prince Dipendra as the perpetrator of the massacre. Dipendra slipped into a coma after shooting himself in the head and died 3 days later. The king's fiercely unpopular brother, Gyanendra, then briefly became the king. We settled Baba in for the night, then returned to the large second-floor private quarters I shared with my wife. Normally, I never watch television, but this night I switched it on, and the murderous drama was everywhere. I immediately flew down the stairs and sprinted out to the darkened bungalow and informed Baba. He threw something on and followed me up the stairs. I remember him sitting about 3 feet from the television in a straight-back oak chair, all the while shaking his head slightly and quietly chanting on his beads. "Everything will be different now," he finally said under his breath. Then he silently got up and left our rooms, soundlessly closing the door behind him. "I think he is upset," Vrinda said earnestly. "I don't think so," I replied. "Baba is a great soul and a city yogi. He's not like us." It was then I remembered something he'd said many months before in his pale yellow room in Nepal as I was leaving for the last time. Reaching the door, he said to me quizzically, "Everything will be different now." The exact thing, word for word, he intoned that night following the massacre. Vrinda and I went to bed. Baba came to stay with us in early spring, which is a lovely time in Lockport. The hundreds of tulips Vrinda and our 2 little girls planted were in bloom. There was always a lovely cooling breeze which blew by a bank of lilac trees on the west side of the old Victorian mansion, sending their sweet perfume high into the air. You could hear the cry of peacocks we kept in a purposeful-built aviary attached to the schoolhouse. Sometimes, too, you could hear Baba performing his puja in the early morning. Then the happy tinkling music of bells joined in on the calliope of sweet sounds in the rarefied air of Sri Puridam. A beautiful long-ago dream that today is no more. One of the biggest controversies at our Niagara County ashram is whether or not Dude Baba truthfully did not eat. Roughly half of the 20 devotees believed it, and half did not. Personally, I thought it small-minded of anyone not to believe such a clearly elevated soul about anything, much less his seemingly miraculous yogic powers. Foremost amongst the doubters was my middle daughter, then about 11 years old, Avalon Onisha. Toward that end, she confided in me one morning that she was going to hide outside his little house and find out what really went on in the morning after we'd left him. On the appointed day, she secreted herself at the edge of the building so that she could peer into one of the windows. About 15 minutes later, she tore into the kitchen where Vrinda was making breakfast, and I was sitting talking to the devotees. "What the hell happened?" I asked, reacting to her obviously undone state. "I saw everything. I know what he does, and he saw me." "Come on, out with it," I shot back. "Well, it's true, he doesn't eat. But he does something really weird," she excitedly proclaimed. "He sits up, his eyes rolled back into his head, and he starts chanting, and then he moves his hands through the air in a really abnormal way." "Ah, yes," I replied. "Look, I would think that pretty much everything he does we would find abnormal, because we aren't highly elevated yogis from one of the world's most spiritual places. I imagine he was meditating, or perhaps in samadhi." "What do you mean he saw you?" Says Avalon. "I was really quiet, and I don't understand how he knew that I was there. There was no way he could see me from that angle of the window. After about 5 minutes of being in that trance, or whatever it was, he stopped, slowly got up, and pressed his face against the window, looking at me straight in the eye. It was scary." "Serves you right," Vrinda chimed in from the far end of the kitchen. "Go and get dressed for school." Baba stayed for about 3 more months, 6 months altogether. Our center was pretty much invaded by the local media after word got out that we had a non-eating saint from Nepal with 26 feet of long matted hair staying in our canal-side ashram. Baba and I did interviews, TV appearances, and lectures both in western New York and Los Angeles. After Baba left, we never saw him again. The ashram broke up. Vrinda and I finished, and I moved to Thailand. In other words, life. It is believed that Baba passed away about 15 years ago, but we have no way of really knowing. He might well still be in Pasupatinath, serving hot tea to strangers and playing his harmonium in praise of Lord Ram in the smoky, ancient, upstairs complex on the outskirts of Kathmandu. Which is the particular ending that I choose to embrace. His Holiness Dude Dehari Baba Maharaj Ki Jai. Sitting with Baba so long ago now in both Kathmandu and our Lockport ashram, I filled up several notebooks with his deep, insightful, devotional quotations on a host of subjects. I thought perhaps we could share them. Happiness and sorrow alternate in one's life. Dharma is rooted in truth. It's difficult to repay the debt of our mothers and fathers. I will never violate any promise given by my father. A wise man should foresee tragedy. Elder brothers and teachers are to be considered one's father. All is God's will, but Maya, or illusion, prevents you from knowing that. He gave us eyes, ears, a nose, and a mouth, but he also gave us wisdom to know how to use them to attain God. All religions are the same. They all lead to God. God is everybody. The same blood flows through us all. The arms, the legs, the heart, all are the same. See? No difference. It is all the same. All women are mothers and sisters, and all men, fathers and brothers in God's family. As long as the time does not arrive, one cannot die. Attachment is the strongest block to realization. Change is the way of the world, And if in this Kali Yuga or Dark Age it has to go this way, then let it go. Unless you are the Lord, you can't stop it anyway, so why berate it? Christ died for the truth. Cleanse the mirror of your heart and you will see God. Clear the mind of all worldly things. If you can't control your mind, then how will you ever realize God? Clinging to money, power, or possessions is a lack of faith in God. Constant repetition of God's name, even without any feeling of devotion, in anger or lethargy, brings out His grace. Once that is realized, there is no room for any misgivings. Due to individual karma, people must be sent away from a saint. When the time for association ends, the separation must occur. Even if a person hurts you, you should give him your love. The worst punishment is to throw someone out of your heart. You should love everyone as God and love each other. If you cannot love each other, you can never achieve your goal. Everything is impermanent except love for God. Everywhere I look, I see only wrong, and that's why I'm always honoring everything. For a sadhu to stay in one place means trouble. A moving yogi and a moving river, impurities and sediments and filth can never settle there. If I stay here, attachment will form. Give up money, and all wealth is yours. God will give you everything you need for your spiritual development. Therefore, hold on to nothing. This world is all attachment, yet you get worried because you are attached. I am in the world, but I'm not concerned with the world. I'm going through the marketplace, but not as a purchaser. I could never get angry with you, not even in a dream. God does everything. I don't want anything. I exist only to serve others. I have no powers. If the clay in a pot is unbaked, then when the pot breaks, the clay is reused. But if the pot is baked, then when it breaks, it is thrown away. If you are free of attachment, you will lead a simple life in a simple environment. If you desire a mango at the moment of death, you'll be born an insect. If you even desire the next breath, you will take birth again. If you have a toothache, you will do what you do, but the mind remains always upon the tooth. If you want to see God, then kill desires. Desires are in the mind. When you have a desire for something, do not act upon it, and it will go away. If you desire to drink this cup of tea, then do not, and the desire for it will fall away. If your Kundalini or spinal energy awakens, you can go to America without a plane. In India, yoga flows with the blood of the people. India is a golden bird. It is a country of rishis and saints. It doesn't matter if you are married or not. It only matters how much you love God. It is not necessary to meet your guru on the physical plane. The guru is not external. Remember that. It is better to see God in everything than to try to figure things out. Keep God in your heart like you keep money in the bank, because it is money in the bank. Be like Gandhi and Christ. The spiritual master knows everything about you. There can be no secrets between the master and the disciple. Keep me in your heart. Love all men as God, even if they hurt you or shame you. Be like Gandhi and Christ. Lust, anger, greed, attachment. They are all paths to hell. Bodies should be cremated because it minimizes the craving of the soul to get back into the body, as the last possession has been given away. Marriage is attachment. You need more devotion and discipline to have union with God when you are married. When a man has reached a point where he can sit in meditation for 6 months, there is no need of eating, no need of latrine, or even rest. Only one drop of Amrit nectar from the top of the head to the body keeps him alive. Whoever works for God, his work will be done by itself. Why are you with such ego? One of these days you will have to leave this world and become one with the earth. Work is God. Work is worship. Seva before everything else. Worldly people go outward, but you must go inward like the tortoise, withdrawing into your shell. You get wisdom from suffering. You are alone with God when you are sick, in the cremation ground or in the hospital. You call on God when you suffer. You must accept the teachings of Christ and follow them. Christ said to be like a little child, never think or speak anything that could harm anyone. You must honor Shiva through love. Ram and Shiva are the same. Ram worshipped Shiva. Shiva worshipped Ram. They are one. You should never talk about your wealth, wife, or sadhana, or they will leave you.
सज्जनों, भक्तगण जो भगवान के प्रति जो श्रद्धावान हैं वो ही भक्त हैं, और जो भगवान के प्रति श्रद्धा नहीं रखते हैं वो अभक्त हैं। यानी भक्त और अभक्त का यही एक परिचय है। जो भगवान में श्रद्धावान हैं, जो भगवान प्रति झुकाव रखते हैं और भगवान का सत्ता, जो सत्ताधारी भगवान का सत्ता को मंजूर करते हैं, वो भक्त हैं। मान लीजिए जिसने ये 3 लोक 14 भुवन का जो ब्रह्मांड जो सृष्टि किया है और उसका नाम है भगवान, और वो भगवान को यदि आप न मानो तो आप अभक्त हो या अज्ञानी हो, और भगवान को मानना ही ज्ञानी कहलाता है। भगवान को मानना, भगवान का नाम जपना, भगवान का कीर्तन करना, भगवान का पूजा करना, भगवान का सेवा करना, ये सब भक्ति मार्ग का यानी मार्ग है। तो मेरे राम को दूधाधारी बाबा, मिल्क बाबा, रामकृष्ण दास मिल्क बाबा के नाम से जाना जाता हूँ, और टूटी फूटी यानी भगवान का इसको नाम कीर्तन करता हूँ, और भगवान का नाम जप में भी कुछ समय देता हूँ, और कुछ समय भगवान शालिग्राम का सेवा में लगाता हूँ, और यही सत्संगत करना और भगवत गुणानुवाद गाना, इसी का नाम है सत्संगत। सज्जनों, तो सत्संग कली युग में बहुत आवश्यक भी है। गोस्वामी तुलसीदास जी ने कहा है, बिन सत्संग विवेक न होई, और राम कृपा बिन सुलभ न सोई। यानी सत्संगति दुर्लभ संसारा, निमिष दंड भरी एकहु बारा। यानी जो एक बार भी सत्संगत कर लेता है तो वो एक निमिष की सत्संगत से भी उसको मोक्ष प्राप्त हो जाता है। सज्जनों, और देखिए अभी जो है मैंने आपसे कहा, क्या कहा कि कल्प वृक्ष और कामधेनु, तो कामधेनु यानी भगवान को जो नमस्कार करता है वो कामधेनु के समान फल देते हैं भगवान। भगवान ने सोचा ये मेरे को नमस्कार कर रहा है, तो वो नमस्कार करने वाला भक्त को भगवान कामधेनु समान हो जाते हैं। तो सज्जनों, कामधेनु समान का मतलब क्या है? तो कामधेनु का मतलब ये है कि कामधेनु गाय जो है वो स्वर्ग लोक की गाय है। सज्जनों, जो कामधेनु का प्रादुर्भाव जो हुआ था वो समुद्र मंथन से हुआ था, तो वो रत्न में गिनती है कामधेनु गाय का। जैसे मान लीजिए कामधेनु गाय, ऐरावत हाथी और श्याम कर्ण घोड़ा, ये जो है तीनों जो है समुद्र से निकले हुए थे। यद्यपि समुद्र से 14 रत्न निकले हैं, तो उनमें से ये 3 रत्न हैं, जो कि हाथी का राजा ऐरावत और घोड़े का राजा श्याम कर्ण और जो गाय का जो महारानी कामधेनु महारानी। तो कामधेनु में क्या गुण है सज्जनों? यद्यपि सभी पुराणों में कामधेनु का वर्णन आता है, तो भी मैं आप सबको संक्षेप में कामधेनु के विषय में बताता हूँ। जो कामधेनु गाय जिसके पास हो, जैसा अभी इंद्रलोक में है, अमरावती में है, देवता के राजा इंद्र के पास है, तो कामधेनु सब कुछ देने में सक्षम है सज्जनों। तो कामधेनु के प्रतीक जितने भी गौ माताएं हैं वो सब कामधेनु के प्रतीक रूप है। तो हमको यद्यपि कामधेनु नहीं मिल रहा है, स्वर्ग में है कामधेनु, और कामधेनु के जो बच्ची है वो वत्सला है, वो आपको पृथ्वी लोक में कभी कभार आती हैं और कोई महर्षि ऋषि मुनियों को बहुत बड़ा सहायता करके वो फिर चली जाती हैं स्वर्ग में, वत्सला। तो सज्जनों, तो कामधेनु में क्या गुण है कि वो जो है प्रत्येक संकल्प, आपका क्या संकल्प है, आप कौन सा संकल्प करते हैं, वही संकल्प पूरा कर देती हैं कामधेनु गाय। तो मान लीजिए आज हम जो गौ माता का सेवा करते हैं, तो वो कामधेनु माता को खुश करने के लिए ही करते हैं। और हम अभी कोई भी गाय माता का सेवा करते हैं, तो वो कामधेनु माता का ही अनुरूप होने के कारण वो हमको यानी कामधेनु का कृपा प्राप्त हो जाता है। तो आज मैं केवल दूध में जो रह रहा हूँ, दूधाधारी बाबा मेरा नाम इसीलिए है कि मैं जो दूध में रह रहा हूँ। तो मैं दूध में क्यों रह रहा हूँ, किस लिए रह रहा हूँ कि दूध लेने से बहुत से विकार, बहुत से यानी जो जितने भी यानी अवगुण है, वो सारे अवगुण आपको बहुत सीमित मात्रा में रह जाते हैं शरीर के अंदर। क्योंकि दूध का व्रत सत्य युग में आपको महारानी अदिति ने किया था, जो शुरुआत का सत्य युग में। और महारानी अदिति यानी महर्षि कश्यप की धर्मपत्नी अदिति, उन्होंने ये दूध का व्रत किया हुआ था, जो कि उस व्रत के प्रभाव से भगवान वामन देव जो अवतीर्ण हुए थे इसी व्रत के प्रभाव से। और जिस वामन भगवान ने यानी महाराजा बलि का बहुत बड़ा यानी जो 100वां जो यज्ञ जो कर रहे थे वो इंद्र पद के लिए, तो वो जो है असमय में इंद्र पद चाह रहे थे। तो असमय में इंद्र पद चाहने के कारण से भगवान जो है उनको असमय में इंद्र पद देना नहीं चाहते थे। इसलिए भगवान जो त्रिविक्रम जो वामन भगवान जो थे, उन्होंने आपको बलि को इंद्र पद देने से यानी रुकावट कर दिए, रोक दिए। तो ये जो है आपको दूध का व्रत का प्रभाव है। सज्जनों। और उसके बाद सनकादियों ने किए।
Part 2.
सीताराम 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 राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे श्याम 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 राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे श्याम 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 राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे श्याम 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 राधे श्याम राधे श्याम 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 राधे 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 श्याम 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 राधे श्याम 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 राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे श्याम 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 सीताराम 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 राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे श्याम 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 राधे 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 श्याम 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 सीताराम 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 राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे श्याम श्यामा श्यामा राधे श्याम 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 श्यामा श्याम Krishna Govinda Hare Murare He Nath Narayana Vasudeva Sri Krishna Govinda Hare Murare Hare Murare He Nath Narayana Vasudeva Sri Krishna Govinda Hare Murare Narayana Vasudeva He Nath Narayana Vasudeva He Nath Narayana Vasudeva He Nath Narayana Vasudeva Sri Krishna Govinda नारायण वासुदेवा हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा श्री कृष्ण गोविंद हरे मुरारे हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा श्री कृष्ण गोविंद हरे मुरारे हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा 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 श्री कृष्ण गोविंद हरे मुरारे हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा श्री कृष्ण गोविंद हरे मुरारे हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा अच्युतं केशवं रामनारायणं कृष्णदामोदरं वासुदेवं हरे अच्युतं केशवं रामनारायणं कृष्णदामोदरं वासुदेवं हरे श्रीधरं गोपिका वल्लभं जानकी नायकं रामचन्द्रं भजे। श्रीधरं माधवं गोपिका वल्लभं जानकी नायकं रामचन्द्रं भजे। श्रीकृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे, हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा, हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा। श्री कृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे, हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा। हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा, हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा। नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा, हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा। श्री कृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे, हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा। हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा। हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा, हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा। श्री कृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे, हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा। सज्जनों, इसका नाम जो है गोपी गीत है, जो यानी ब्रज के गोपी बाला जितनी भी थी वो सब सम्मिलित होकर के भगवान श्री कृष्ण के वियोग में, जो भगवान श्री कृष्ण जो छिप गए थे उन लोगों की नजरों से, जो ब्रज बाला जो गोपिकाएं थी, उन सब का ये सम्मिलित भजन है सज्जनों। अत्यंत यानी भाव विभोर होकर के वे जो गा रहे हैं। श्री कृष्ण गोविंद नारायण वासुदेव, हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा। हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा, श्री कृष्ण गोविंद हरे मुरारे, हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा। हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा, हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा। नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा, हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा। नारायण 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 हरि, नारायण 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 लक्ष्मी, नारायण 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 हरि। नारायण 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 लक्ष्मी, नारायण 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 लक्ष्मी, नारायण 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 श्रीमन्। नारायण 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 श्रीमन्, नारायण 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 हरि। दुर्योधन गृह मेवा त्यागे, दुर्योधन गृह मेवा त्यागे, शाक विदुर घर पारायण, हरि हरि साकविदुर घर पारायण लक्ष्मी नारायण 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 हरि लक्ष्मी नारायण 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 श्रीमन नारायण 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 हरि सबरी को बेर सुदामा को तांडूल सबरी को बैर सुदामा को तांडूल रुचि रुचि भोग लगारायण हरि हरि रुचि रुचि भोग लगारायण श्रीमन नारायण 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 लक्ष्मी नारायण 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 हरि नारायण 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 श्रीमन नारायण 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 हरि दुर्योधन गृह मेवा त्यागे दुर्योधन गृह मेवा त्यागे साकविदुर घर खारायण हरि हरि साकविदुर घर पारायण श्रीमन नारायण 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 हरि नारायण 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 श्रीमन नारायण 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 लक्ष्मी नारायण 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 हरि सबरी को बयार सुदामा को तांडूल सबरी को बैर सुदामा को तांडूल रुचि रुचि भोग लगारायण हरि हरि रुचि रुचि भोग लगारायण श्रीमन नारायण 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 हरि नारायण 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 लक्ष्मी नारायण 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 हरि नारायण 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 लक्ष्मी नारायण 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 श्रीमन नारायण 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 हरि नारायण 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 लक्ष्मी नारायण 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 लक्ष्मी नारायण 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 लक्ष्मी नारायण 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 लक्ष्मी नारायण 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 लक्ष्मी नारायण 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 लक्ष्मी नारायण 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 लक्ष्मी नारायण 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 लक्ष्मी नारायण 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 लक्ष्मी नारायण 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 लक्ष्मी नारायण 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 ॐ तुलसी काष्ठजां मालिकां कंठी धारयति भूतले सजीवन मुक्तो भवति। ॐ तुलसी काष्ठजां मालिकां धारयति भूतले सजीवन मुक्तो भवति। तुलसी महारानी नमो नमो। तुलसी महारानी नमो नमो। नमो नमो तुलसी महारानी नमो नमो। नमो 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 तुलसी महारानी नमो नमो। चार पदार्थ 36 व्यंजना। चार पदार्थ 36 व्यंजना। बिन तुलसी हरि एको न मानी। चार पदार्थ 36 व्यंजना। बिन तुलसी हरि एको न मानी। तुलसी महारानी नमो नमो। तुलसी महारानी नमो नमो। नमो 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 तुलसी महारानी नमो नमो। रुक्मिणी राधा जाम्बवती। रुक्मिणी राधा जाम्बवती। बिन तुलसी हरि एको न मानी। बिन तुलसी हरि एको न मानी। तुलसी महारानी नमो नमो। तुलसी महारानी नमो नमो। नमो नमः ओ नमो नमः। तुलसी महारानी नमो नमः। रुक्मिणी राधा जाम्बवती। सत्य भामा तुलसी बिन हरि जी एको न माने, बिन तुलसी हरि एको न माने। तुलसी महारानी नमो नमो, नमो नमो तुलसी महारानी नमो नमो। हरि की पटरानी नमो नमो, शालिक राम की पटरानी नमो नमो। शालिक राम प्रभु जी एको न माने, बिन तुलसी हरि को न माने। तुलसी महारानी नमो नमो, नमो नमः, नमो नमः तुलसी महारानी नमो नमो। तुलसी महारानी नमो नमो, शालिक राम की पटरानी नमो नमो। शालिक राम की पटरानी नमो नमो। तुलसी महारानी नमो नमो। कलिजुग के अंदर में बिना तुलसी पत्र से भगवान श्री कृष्ण, भगवान श्री राम, भगवान श्री शालिक राम, कोई भी भगवान विष्णु बिना तुलसी के कोई भी पदार्थ स्वीकार नहीं करते हैं सज्जनों। तो तुलसी पत्र काम इसीलिए कहा गया है कि तुलसी दल जो प्रत्येक 84 व्यंजन में छोड़ करके ही भगवान का भोग लगाना चाहिए सज्जनों। बिना तुलसी के जो भोग होता है वो अपवित्र अशुद्ध माना जाता है, और इस कारण से तुलसी माता का स्थान सबसे ऊंचा है कलिजुग के लिए। और महामंत्र में कहा भी गया है, ओम तुलसी काष्ठिजाम मालिकाम कंठे धारयति स जीवन मुक्तो भवति। यानी जिस मनुष्य जो है तुलसी कंठ को धारण करते हैं, जो मानव, वो इसी शरीर से वो जीवन मुक्त कहलाते हैं और जीवन मुक्त हो जाते हैं। बिन तुलसी हरि को न माने, बिन तुलसी हरि को न माने। तुलसी महारानी नमो नमो। तुलसी महारानी नमो नमो। दूधाधारी बाबा काठमांडू नेपाल से, यानी अभी अमेरिका से आपको ये सुप्रवचन, सुमधुर भगवान का जो नाम है वो आप लोगों तक पहुंचा रहा हूं। तुलसी महारानी नमो नमः, तुलसी महारानी नमो नमः। तुलसी महारानी नमो नमः।
राधे 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 बोलो, राधे गोविंद बोलो। 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 राधे 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 बोलो, राधे गोविंद बोलो।
Oh, deep blue Lord of my heart, show me your unmasked face, shining like 1,000 suns in an empty sky. Oh, ragged soul, unleash me from the body, free me from mind, release me from the iron grip of the senses, banish me forever from this weary world. Dear Redeemer, I bow to you by the reedy river, see you in the trees, gather you in the harvest, breathe you in the morning breeze. Soul shaker, shake loose my pride, turn me upside down, drown me in your foaming tide. Lord Shri Krishna, smiling cowherd of Vrindavan, allow me entrance into your abode, but only as a speck of dust along your road, or a feather falling from your proud peacocks, a drop of water in your ocean. Nothing grand may I be, but grand enough to live with thee.
राधे 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 बोलो, राधे गोविंद बोलो। राधे 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 बोलो, राधे गोविंद बोलो। राधे 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 बोलो, राधे गोविंद बोलो। Radhe Radhe bolo, Radhe Govinda bolo. Radhe 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 bolo, Radhe Govinda bolo. Radhe 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 bolo, Radhe Govinda bolo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jagannatha Das, A Brief Life Sketch. You Will Go Back to Godhead, Srila Prabhupada to Jagannatha Das, Summer 1971. My blessings to you for your work. Ram Das, 1973. I'm really behind what you're doing. More power to you. Timothy Leary, 1995. Jagannath really knows how to get a project done well. Mukunda Das Goswami, 1995. Born on September 11, 1953 in Rochester, New York, Jagannath grew up in the 1960s, an enthusiastic hippie of the highest order. Traveling around the world on his own from the age of just 13, touching down at such celebrated counterculture hotspots as Haight-Ashbury, Woodstock, the Isle of Wight, swinging London, and the East Village, Dasa was sold on the apparent virtue of the peace and love philosophy of the counterculture. In 1970, he became interested in the science of devotional yoga, or bhakti, and spent many years drifting between a life of discipline and meditation to the outer limits of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. In November of 1972, he met his wife, Brenda Black, at a community college in Tampa, Florida. She later took the initiated name Vrindarani Devi Dasi. Forsaking drugs and meat in the mid-70s, Jagannath became a well-known figure in the Ybor City art scene in Tampa, and later tucked himself away for 5 years in the wilds of western New York State, writing poetry, having babies, and solidifying his growing mindset to not only try and live the one-pointed life of a bhakti yogi, but impart the dynamic art to others. In 1980, he met His Divine Grace Bhakti Hirde Mangal Niloy Goswami Maharaj in Toronto, and along with his wife took initiation into the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu some 2 years later. Their new respective spiritual names were Jagannatha Das and Vrindarani Devi. In between this landmark, the couple met and/or studied the teachings of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Baba Ram Das, Timothy Leary, and Paramahansa Yogananda. Gradually, the day-to-day reality of having to provide for a growing family, coupled with the highly artistic, contemplative nature of his work, ultimately convinced Jagannath to make a firm decision to follow the path of Gaudiya Vaishnavism to its logical conclusion. One of the early highlights for sometimes actor Jagannatha was his portrayal of the marvelous magical Burger King and Ronald McDonald for the respective hamburger conglomerates, a strange turn for the confirmed ethical lacto-vegetarian. But Das, who had been acting professionally from the age of 12, considered the offbeat assignment simply another theatrical opportunity. Traveling throughout New England in the summer of 1978 with the top-drawer Burger King Roadshow, he experienced something very close to old-time vaudeville, appearing in tiny towns all around the Cape. In 1980, he was chosen from over 400 actors to play the part of Ronald McDonald for Canada. It was to be the official beginning of his grown-up career. Moving his family to the ethnic suburbs of Scarborough, Ontario, he stayed with McDonald's of Canada for exactly 1 year, and then left in disgust after witnessing what he considered to be the purposeful manipulation of children via the McDonald's advertising juggernaut. Further, as a person of conscience, the idea of promoting meat-eating to thousands of innocent young minds was not only repugnant, but karmically frightening. In the spring of 1984, Jagannatha, desperate for a job, looked in the yellow pages under P for publisher, rang the first one he saw, and was offered a 3-country publishing deal for his first book, The Beatles: A Celebration, that very afternoon. It was to be a major turning point. After moving back to Niagara County, New York in 1986, Jagannatha and Vrinda established the New Navadvip Vaishnava community in 1993 on 12-plus acres along the pastoral banks of the Erie Canal in Lockport. Legally incorporated in September of 1996 under the name of Shri, the Spiritual Realization Institute, the ambitious project was an international resource for those interested in the Vedic arts and sciences, as well as a fully functioning educational and cultural institution. Perhaps the greatest personal challenge met by Das was his solitary trek to India on pilgrimage in May of 1996. Landing in Delhi in the early morning, he braved the rigors of the accident-strewn Agra road, ending up in the holy township of Vrindavan, the place of Sri Krishna's transcendental pastimes some 5,000 years ago. From there he journeyed north from Delhi to Hardwar, where he bathed in the holy Ganges for the first time, before moving on to the peaceful village of Rishikesh in the foothills of the Himalayas. Asked to describe the most meaningful thing about his first trip to India, he had this to say: "I used to lie in my bed in the ashram in Vrindavan, listening to the sounds of the early morning. All at once I could hear peacocks crying, bells ringing, beating drums, monks chanting, people laughing, and the clatter of horses' hooves on the cobblestones. In Vrindavan, the flowers bloom very early before daylight, so the air is filled with the perfume of flowering trees and plants of every description. I remember getting up at dawn once and watching a little barefoot girl of about 5 or 6 walking under the shaded canopy of the towering trees which lined Raman Reddy. Coming to a rather ordinary-looking oak, she reached up, touched it gently with her right hand, and then put her fingers to her forehead. She then bowed down in the red dust in front of the ancient tree. It was a wonderful, inexplicable, unimaginable event, until I realized that in India, the trees, the rivers, the mountains, the animals, everything, even a tree is holy. While in America, very little but the almighty dollar was." By 2020, Jagannath Das has penned over 40 internationally best-selling biographies, published in over 15 languages, including Japanese, German, Italian, Dutch, and Spanish. In addition, following a chance encounter in 1995 with West Coast music company CEO Michael McLean of Delta Music in Santa Monica, California, Jagannath signed on to produce a series of spoken word CDs and cassettes. 1,000 audiobooks later, he's still at it. Today, Jagannath is a popular writer, producer, and narrator of audiobooks internationally, even starting his own company, Icon Audio Arts, in the early 2000s. Although his wife passed away unexpectedly in 2017, Jagannath remains true to the Vaishnava culture which both of them dedicated their lives. This, then, is a little bit about Jagannath Das. Hari Om Tat Sat.
We hope you've enjoyed this Inner Lion Media presentation. Inner Lion Media. Thank you for listening.